Morning. Welcome to the casual Friday edition of a Dreamforce IoT session. It's casual Friday, so guys like Callum here, who I work with, know that this is the first time I've actually worn jeans to a conference. So this is a big day for me. It's a big step, big step. So hopefully we're going to have some fun together here. We're going to learn a little bit. The other thing, by the way, I just got this about 5 minutes ago. It's going to track me as I walk around. I've never seen it before. So I'm going to jump around and talk a little bit. So we're going to keep it casual. We're going to learn some things together about IoT. We've got 4 things we want to do. We're going to talk a little bit about the IoT. Look, I'm going to walk down already. I'm going to see if this starts working. We're going to talk a little bit about the IoT. We're going to talk a little bit about Salesforce and Xively, our brand, and how we work together to help customers accelerate their innovation around IoT. We're going to give you some customer examples. And then Callum is going to actually do a demo. He's going to show Salesforce IoT Cloud working with Xively in a use case that's part of the Salesforce manufacturing industry vertical use case. So before we get rolling, though, I want to just introduce who's up there. You've heard Callum's name a couple times there. He's part of Xively. He's our senior product owner. And Lisa D'Alessandro, who runs partnerships for IoT Cloud at Salesforce. Hi, guys.
Hello.
So, whoops, I double-clicked. Any of you guys anyone here seen this Freight Farms connected farm in the dev zone? Anyone? Show of hands. Pretty mind-blowing. They can grow an acre of lettuce in a box that's, I don't know, 8 or 9 by 10. Boston Globe, they had this salad disco thing, because if you've gone into it, you'll see it looks like a disco inside with all the LED lights that's providing the illumination for the plants to grow. But we thought, because this is Friday, it's the last day of Dreamforce, we'd actually start with we're going to do a quick video to kind of show you what IoT is, right? There's this question about what is IoT? Is it about things? Is it about people? Is it about experience? Is it about all of it? So we want to show you one version of what IoT means from the perspective of a giant box that people like Elon Musk's brother Kimball is using to start a farming incubator in New York that is being used by Google to feed 20,000 employees in Palo Alto. And even guys like Peter Diamandis, who, if you've read the book Abundance, is using to talk about exponential growth of technology. So Callum, why don't you cue a little video for us?
Core customer at Freight Farms is a small business farmer. This is someone who's looking to start a new business around farming. Reliability and uptime is crucial for this. We knew in a partner such as Xively that wouldn't be an issue anymore. We could focus on building the applications that would make a big difference in the farmer's life while leaving the platform to someone else.
Freight Farm started as a mutual vision with John and I, looking at producing food in the urban environment closer to where people consume that food. And eventually, through understanding the industry, understanding the landscape of technology and what was available, coming to the conclusion that a modular, scalable farm operation was the key to success.
So we build hydroponic farms inside of atmospherically controlled shipping containers for year-round growing to provide urban environments with local produce 365 days a year.
We were looking for a connected product management tool, and Xively was really that platform that offered something that brought our customers more usability and more access into how they interact with their farm.
Our first take of connectivity was built in-house, but quickly we realized some of the challenges, specifically around security as well as scale, and running our own MQTT server became more of a burden than a benefit. At this point, we started looking for partners. We came across Xively and quickly realized, both with their scale, security, and built on top of the standards such as MQTT, they were a great fit.
As we developed the software and the connectivity to really make the Freight Farm a connected device, there's a big hurdle when it comes to a lot of the complicated back end to really get a scaled product connected and stable, which is really important when you're operating a farm. And that's why, as we were investigating that big, enormous issue, picking and working with Xively just made sense for us.
At Freight Farms, we succeed when our farmers succeed. So we're looking to roll out all the tools we can to ensure that their business grows.
Seeing something like Xively come to the table and say, hey, we can offer a larger platform that you can snap onto and build off of, that made us move a lot faster. That was a big win for us, is seeing how fast we could take some of these big ideas and turn them into big concepts that were tangible and worked really well.
So as we look into the future, collecting the data from how farms are performing in optimal conditions and with different crops and best practices, we are actually already starting to use that data to help farmers before they have problems. So it's that idea of using the data for a proactive approach to troubleshoot and even just help our farmers become better.
Just having the platform we have today really brings us all around the world and across a lot of different business models. Sky's the limit, and maybe even beyond.
So what do you think? It's pretty cool. I really encourage you, if you haven't seen it live and in person, go to the DevZone, see it. By the way, I think they've sold 3 of them here at this conference. Like $30,000, you can have your own, grow an acre of lettuce. So why did I pick this? Number one, again, it's Friday. We want to see something that we can kind of relate to. But these types of products, right, are kind of emblematic of what the IoT is all about. It's not just about whiz-bang gadgets, right, that end up in a drawer later. It's really about outcomes. The IoT is really about producing new outcomes, and sometimes with like everyday products. If you go to the IoT cabinet, I'm going to show you some customer examples later, you'll see really basic things that Xively customers, Salesforce customers. You'll see thermostats, you'll see lights, you'll see pet doors. I mean, really simple things, but they're being used in different ways to create new value to customers, ultimately. And Freight Farm is just a great example of that. I encourage you to see them. This is just this kind of quick architecture, and we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper later with some other examples and in the demo you're going to see. But if you just kind of think about the companies here that are up on stage, is you've got Freight Farm, so they have a thing. It's a physical object. It's a whole interconnected hydroponic farm that's connected via cellular network over a gateway up into the Xively Cloud. And from there, we have a bunch of apps that are kind of tied into Heroku and Salesforce through Xively, and that communicate back and forth with the physical asset through Xively. And then that data flowing into Salesforce, where you'll see we have a really cool wave analytics demo where you can see all sorts of information about what's happening with the farm, proactive information that essentially a farmer would use to remotely operate a farm. So you can see that demo live, but just at a high level, that's kind of how the pieces fit together. So this is a tech conference, and there is technology in IoT, so we should talk about it, right? We should talk about what's happening with technology and what's driving IoT. So the big message here is the barriers to entry for the IoT are coming down. The technology barriers are coming down. And let's just look at different pieces, right? You look at the cost of embedded processing, the smarts and the communications that are in the things, lights, farms, connected homes, industry. Nowadays, at our customers are seeing prices where you can add connectivity, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Bluetooth, to anything with an on-off switch for like a couple dollars, handful of dollars incremental BOM cost. And watching Moore's Law bring that down, at some point that's going to be negligible. So the barriers to connecting things are almost non-existent. I mean, it's there. That's totally there. And cloud, we're at a cloud conference here, we're a couple cloud companies. That means that the barrier to going global, again, non-existent. You can run a global business at the push of a button nowadays. And then if you talk about the data that comes from those things through the cloud, a lot of people say that's where the value of IoT is. It's in the data that you're able to get and what you're able to do with that, using analytics tools, machine learning, all of that to essentially interpret the voice of the customer through the voice of their product. And the voice of the product is becoming a surrogate for the voice of the customer and a way to engage with them. And how do you engage with them? Through apps. Everyone expects apps. So, and of course, I'm not even going to talk about the enormous market potential. You've all seen it. Tell me what numbers you subscribe to. But it's going to be big. We know it's going to be big. But, if you take that, the fact that barriers are coming down, on the other side, what you also see at the same time is the customer expectations are going up, right? Customers are expecting more. Customers are expecting their products to be connected. We had one company say, CEO of a company is making a smoke detector that says, if you're making kind of advanced, home electronic smoke detector or thermostat and you're not connecting it, you're planning to exit the market because people are just going to expect these things to be connected, which is true. And then, just like you expect with your digital world, you want access to those products wherever you are. And this, by the way, we use kind of a consumer-looking example, but the same is true for our commercial customers as well as, kind of connected home, that people want access to that wherever they are. And then the other trend around mass personalization, right? When we log on to Amazon or even if we go to YouTube or something, we expect them to know something about us, right? Without being creepy, of course, but we expect, there's this trend of mass personalization. So we are expecting companies to learn about us through our data. And then we want delightful experiences, right? The apps that are now often the interfaces to physical products where they never were before is something that we're expecting more and more. So anyone here in a company that's actually considering launching an IoT product, a physical product that would be connected? So we got, okay, about a half dozen hands. We'd hope to hear from you, maybe some questions a little bit later on. But just like all of our other customers, the journey had to start somewhere. It had to start somewhere, often with an idea, a concept, or some competitive pressure. But whatever the reason is, you have to start. So let me tell you about companies who started. So we surveyed a few hundred companies through Machina Research last year, and the most staggering statistic we got back was that 81% of the companies that started building an IoT solution, essentially it was an IT exercise. It was going out, grabbing standard technology, out in the cloud, some, an Arduino board, a Raspberry Pi, kind of cobbling things together. And it worked fine for the first prototypes. I mean, it was very cool. You could do very, very cool things. The challenge was when they went from idea to commercial scale, they would just hit a wall. They would hit a big wall. And the wall was, what, according to the companies we surveyed, and you can get this research report off of Xively.com, is just the overall complexity of the IoT. Not really understanding all the things you really have to get right in the IoT to really launch a commercial product. And we've actually broke this down in a white paper that became a little bit of a sensation about 3 years ago, Callum, the 7 Steps white paper. So we broke down this concept of what does it take to actually launch an IoT product. And just to kind of touch on these quickly, because it's complex, but there's ways to navigate it, right? You got to start with the business case. What's the value to the customer? What's the value to your business? Everything has to start there. If it starts with tech, you're dead. Start with a good business case, at least you have a good start. But then, there's all these other things you have to unwind. The hardware itself, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, 802.15.4, MQTT, CoAP, HTTP, what protocols are you using? For lots of companies that are not accustomed to connectivity, this is alien technology. You're totally in outer space here. And then you get to the cloud, the back-end infrastructure. Is it scalable, high performance, secure? Is it geo-balanced, load balanced? All of those things that you have to consider when you're running a SaaS business, but you never think about if you're making white goods. And then kind of going around. What about the applications? Like we said before, the apps are now in many cases the interface to the physical product. So getting that user experience dead on right is critical for a successful product. Usually because you're not the only one out there, right? There's others who you're competing against, and that is often the face of the product. And this is kind of going around business system integrations. You're not launching a connected product. Ideally, if you're doing it right, you're launching a connected business. And that's one of the places where Salesforce comes in is so critical, because if you want to launch a connected business, you want to tie your products into those systems that you're already using to run your business. So to kind of seamlessly integrate a product experience with a business experience. So analytics, automation, service and support. I'll ping service and support really quickly, because one of the big hurdles we see our customers go through is that the second they connect a product, the second you connect it, you go from being a product vendor to a service provider. Product vendor, service provider, 24/7 service provider. And the support model for that is totally different than how you support a washing machine or a piece of factory floor equipment. And you get that all, so the point of this slide is, because companies are doing it, we're going to show you examples of companies that are doing it, but it's just really good to have a map, a road map for how to get through this. I probably should have said a trail map or something. That probably would be better, right? More fitting. I'll have to change the slide later. But you're following what we're saying, right? Making sense so far? So, okay. So, At Xively, this is what we do, is we try to help companies accelerate that. And the way we do it is a few different ways. First of all is our IoT platform. Now, I'm not going to go into a deep tech dive. Would love to do it, can do it separately, but just at a high level. So, we like to say if you have to break down an IoT solution in 3 simple things, you can say you have to connect, manage, and engage. First, you have to connect the product. You have to connect it at very high scale, so you can get a lot of data back and forth. You have to do it very securely, and I don't just mean end-to-end encryption of the data that's flowing back and forth. I mean identity management, making sure that the people, the users, the apps, the organizations, they're all talking to each other, are who they're supposed to be, and tracking that identity and managing it. Then there's device and user management. So, by device management can be something as simple as firmware distribution and updates. Sounds simple, but distributing firmware updates to thousands and thousands of devices or deployed in the field is really, really hard. It's tough to get right. And you don't get many points for doing it right, but you lose a lot of points if you do it wrong. So device management, and then user management, which is this concept of managing the relationship graph between, we said, for users, apps, devices. How do you know who has rights to what? How do you manage that? How do you give those rights? How do you revoke them if they need to be revoked in an easy way without a lot of coding? So that's kind of what we do. And then the customer engagement piece that we talked about is where we partner with Salesforce quite a bit. That's where we use Salesforce to help engage with the connected customer. And one other thing I just want to say about that is that we know no company can do it alone. We can't do it alone. Salesforce can't do it alone. There's no company out there that can do it alone. So for us, it's really important to not only have a platform and a pro services team that can help implement these solutions, but partners. And we break up partners into 3 categories. Number 1 is hardware partners, right? The companies that make the chips, modules, gateways that actually connect the physical products to the cloud. Then system integrator partners who have the expertise, maybe domain expertise in a certain vertical market, or just the capabilities to implement total solutions for customers. And then finally, ISV partners or other software partners that just extend our value. And that's a great example of where Salesforce, for example, for business orchestration, automation, and engagement happen, and platforms like Heroku within Salesforce for building apps, for example. So that's kind of a really simple way we think about ecosystem. So, this gap, you've probably seen this slide with the gap before. We had a similar one last year. We were here. This is the 4th time we've been presenting here at Dreamforce around IoT. This gap between the possibility and solutions and customers is a real one, right? We've seen so many potential customers struggle with getting out of the tech and into the customer and bridging that gap. And the way we try to do it with Salesforce, again, is we're just at a high level providing the data connectivity. So we're connecting the physical objects into systems of engagement like Salesforce, and really trying to bridge that gap so that you're kind of covering all 7 of those steps. So have you been, others who have seen beyond the freight farm, has anyone here been to the IoT cabin? To the IoT cabin, okay, so a bunch of hands, great. So the great news, and we are just actually really, really grateful for this opportunity, is that all of those customers in the IoT cabin are Xively and Salesforce customers together. So we've worked with every one of those companies to go through this journey. Many others, but just these are ones that we've brought here. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of them, because you already heard about freight farms. I'm going to touch on Lutron, who's a company that Callum's actually worked very, very closely with. So they make connected lighting and shade monitoring. They actually have an Alexa integration that we're showing too. But they came to us saying, yes, we can manage all the lights in the New York Times building and in the Guggenheim in Barcelona, but we want a simple, reliable, secure home connectivity system, and we needed it to work as fast and reliably as like flipping the real light switch on the wall, but through an app. They really struggled. They came to us, we worked together with Salesforce, Heroku, and them, and from the time we shook hands, signed a contract, you were buying that product off the shelf in 4 months. Because all that back end, all the apps, everything was done in 4 months, which is incredibly fast. Really, really fast if you think about it. Another example they'll touch on and move on. They were in the cabin last year. They're not here this year. Sato Printer. So they're in Japan. They make a connected printer that's used more in commercial environments than connected home, where their strategic competitive advantage is they wanted to be the best at proactive support. So they built a system called Sato Online Services, SOS, that they use to support products in the field and offer enhanced service contracts to their customers for all-time, uptime, 24/7 printing. So that thing we talked about before, from being a product vendor to being a service provider. They're providing printing as a service. So just some examples, and there's plenty more. Cool so far? Okay, so I'm going to just touch on a little bit deeper if you think about where Xively and Salesforce IoT Cloud come up, because I want to have Lisa come up and share a little bit about IoT Cloud itself. If you just had to kind of walk away with a mental picture, you get things, sources of data, right? Sources of data, things people use. You get Xively that connects these devices securely, high performance, and kind of manages and organizes the data in a way that can work with an engagement system like Salesforce and going into IoT Cloud that handles a lot of the business logic, customer engagement activities that Lisa's going to talk about. And then, there's a whole other world, right? There's a whole other world of apps and solutions that can kind of further extend engagement capabilities or usage models. And, so it really is part of an ecosystem. So, Lisa.
Hello,
you can stay up there too if you want.
Oh, okay.
Or you can come down with us.
I'm going to come down.
Come on down.
Since
All right.
Mario came down. So I don't know, have any of you been to any of the Salesforce IoT sessions yet? Have you had a chance to kind of see? That's good. So I'm just going to do a very high level overview, but I want to ask a question. Since I'm Salesforce, what is behind every device? Who knows? Customer, right? So why is Salesforce doing IoT? Because we're the customer company, right? So a lot of people ask that question, so I want to kind of get that out of the way. As Mario talked about, I mean, these guys are really hooking up all the devices for us, right? They're providing that connectivity, they're providing those services, and then what are they doing? They're connecting to IoT Cloud. So why IoT Cloud? What makes us different from other platforms that are out there? No different than any of our other products and services. Rapid innovation, right? Callum's going to go through a demo, and you're going to actually see this, but it is no code. It's click, not code, right? So that's the same across all of our services. Customer context, right? Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud. Basically, we have the customer context. That's something that no other company has, right? And we integrate that with the device data, right? So we add the contextual data to the profiles, and then we build these orchestrations, and the output is that we trigger actions in Salesforce, right? We can trigger a service ticket in Service Cloud. We can trigger an upsell, cross-sell opportunity in Sales Cloud. We can trigger a marketing journey in Marketing Cloud. So far makes sense? And real-time engagement. So this is happening real-time, and you're going to see this in the demo as well. It's not like, this happens 5 minutes later, right? As soon as a device wants to tell our system something, boom, it's like immediate. So it's rapid. Let me see if I hit the right button here. There we go. So what do we want to accomplish? What does Salesforce want to accomplish? We want to transform products into engaging experiences, right? I mean, this is really important. This creates real business value, right? Because right now, if you're just selling a product, right, customers may say, yeah, that's a kind of cool product. But if you really want to engage with the product, like a Fitbit, you really want to go on a journey with your customer, this is what IoT Cloud can do for you. So I'm not going to go into the details of all the little icons in the slide here. But if you are interested in really learning more about what this means, you can go to our website. You can pull down the IoT Cloud documentation, and you can look into this more detail, or come afterwards and ask me any questions that you have. Okay, so use cases. Yes, we have actual customers. So Mario brought up a few, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about the customers, these customers, but key use cases for our IoT Cloud, are really transforming products into services. And this is really big with digital revolution going on right now. Everybody wants to look at, I don't want to sell you a car anymore. I want to sell you the services in the car. Probably a couple years from now, you won't even care what car you're buying. You're going to wonder, does it have Wi-Fi? Does it have, you know, all the different kinds of services that one might want, right? You probably would care if it's a Porsche versus like a, you know, I don't know, a Honda, but anyhow.
I might care. I would care.
So anyhow, so we're working with a company, MAN. MAN is the truck division of VW, and we're actually helping them transform their trucks into trucking services, right? And what does that do? What's the outcome? What's the business outcome? That increases revenue for companies. So you need to, as customers, think about, how do I want to increase my revenue in my company by transforming a product into a service? And we can help you kind of figure that out. So another really big use case right now is proactive monitoring and services. I don't know if any of you guys saw the KUKA robots that were out. We had them throughout the Moscone. But anyhow, what we've done for KUKA is that every, I think, 17 seconds, a KUKA robot, a team of KUKA robots can build a vehicle. And if you think about it, what happens if that KUKA robot goes down just for 1 minute? Those are 3 cars that aren't going to ship, right? So that doesn't just impact the car company, that impacts the consumer who actually wants that car. So what we do with KUKA is we basically wire up the robot to say, hey, I'm not feeling very good. You know I'm not supposed to be serviced for 6 months from now, but you need to come over and you need to check me out, right? And so it creates a service ticket in Service Cloud, and we can go proactively service that robot so they're never down. And that decreases costs for a company. So you can either increase revenue or you can decrease costs. And I think that's all I had. So if you have any other questions about IoT Cloud and why IoT Cloud, please come up to me afterwards. Thank you.
Showtime, Callum?
Showtime.
All right.
So what I'm gonna, give me 1 second to get the demo set up here, but what I'm gonna show you guys after everything that they've talked about today is how we can use Xively as sort of the last mile connectivity, and then use IoT Cloud to bring in all the data that we have about the devices and actually take some actions within Salesforce. And we're going to show you, as soon as I can log into my org here, how we can do all that together.
Do you want me to dance and sing for a little bit while you get that logged in?
I mean, I'd always like you to dance and sing, Mario.
I don't know. I don't think they'd like it. I think that it would be a very different Q&A session if that happened.
They might leave, actually, if that happens.
Yeah, they might.
All right, you guys think about how you're going to turn your products into services while he's trying to get this up.
Okay, so what I have here on the right hand of the screen is actually IoT Cloud. So if you haven't seen it yet, or you haven't seen the full demo of how to use IoT Cloud, how to set up orchestrations, definitely would encourage you to go down to the dev zone, take a look at a demo, get a demo from somebody, because there's a lot of complication that I'm gonna show you how it works, but I'm not gonna walk through every step here today. But the core of IoT Cloud is setting up these rules and orchestrations for what to do with the data when it comes in. On the left-hand side of the screen, what I have is our Xively product simulator. So as Mario mentioned, and what Xively really provides for IoT Cloud or for integrations to Salesforce in general, is that last mile connectivity to collect the data from the device, the actual firmware and software that resides on the device. And I wanted to roll one of these big Badger Power generators in here today, but I didn't think it was going to fit on the stage, and we're on the second floor, so it probably wasn't going to happen. So in order to facilitate this demo, what I'm going to be using is the Xively product simulator. And this is some software that we have at Xively that helps companies make a virtual model of their product and model out, here are the real sensors it's going to have, here's the real data it's going to send, here's what it really looks like, so that they can start building applications, orchestrations before they sensorize their whole product, spin a PCB board, or try to build finished hardware. So if you have more questions about that, we're showing how you can use it, how you can set up your own product simulator for your product down at the Xively booth in the IoT cabin.
Callum, can I say something about that really quick?
Of course, Mario.
Of course I can, and you know I will anyway. So one way to think about this, right, is if you're thinking about your product, in about 20 minutes, you can go down to your Xively booth, take a picture of your product, hook sensors up to it, and actually integrate it with Salesforce and have a virtual version of a whole IoT connected system that you can experiment with, ideate, iterate, validate before, like Callum said, you actually have to do anything with hardware. Then when you do it with hardware, everything you built is on commercial platforms, and you just bring it to the hardware after you've gone through a lot of those iterations. So you're going to kind of see that live here.
Yep. So what we're going to talk about today, I'll kind of set up the demo that we've built here, is for a company called Badger Power, and they make large commercial generators. And what we're going to be tracking, we have a number of things we're tracking. You can see the power output, temperature, voltage being generated by the generator. But what we're going to talk about today is the use case for the replenishable, the fuel in the generator. And we're going to simulate what happens maybe for a fuel company that's responsible for making sure this generator that's at a remote site always has fuel in it and never runs out. So we've created an orchestration in IoT Cloud on the right, which shows how full every generator is. In this case, it's going to be tracking pretty much all of them because we only have one generator in this simulator. But if you imagine thousands of these, then you would have multiple generators in multiple states of fuel level at once. So we can see as I've changed the value in the product simulator, we're actually sending real messages through Xively into IoT Cloud, and now we've reflected our one generator is only 3/4 full. And we can continue to drag it down here, but what we want to do is really show what happens when we start getting into levels where you might want to think about refueling this generator. So now we're at 1/4 full, and the orchestration that I've set up is into Service Cloud here. And so what we want to do is create a new case. So we can see that automatically here, a new case has been created, fuel level alert, and it has the remaining fuel right in there, 447, which we can see is the same amount that it currently has. But it's currently a low priority case. 447 gallons is still a lot of fuel. This thing can probably still run for a few more days, but you probably want to set up and get the truck roll ready. But we can see what happens here if more time goes on, maybe the fuel company's busy or this generator is really in a far remote place, and it gets even lower on fuel. And it gets down into critical fuel levels. And again, all of these messages are being sent through Xively into IoT Cloud, and we can see now that we are down to 47 gallons. So as every day, minute that this fuel is decreasing, this case is being updated in real time within Salesforce. But now we've hit another threshold since we're at this critical fuel level where instead of a low priority case, it's now a high priority case. If somebody doesn't send out a fuel truck to refuel this thing right away, then it's going to have a serious problem. So this is great. We've created cases. You guys have probably seen a lot of IoT demos where you create cases in Salesforce. It's cool that IoT Cloud can update them in real time, but one of the other really good features of IoT Cloud and Thunder in general is that you can create multiple objects within Salesforce just with a single message coming in. So if we go over and look at our opportunities, we can see that now that this is a critical fuel level for this fuel company that needs to go out and refill it, there's also been an opportunity created because they're going to sell diesel fuel or whatever it is to this company who's using this generator on site. And we can see reflecting the exact same information that there's 1,353 gallons that need to be delivered to it. This has a potential value of almost $2,300 here, and we'll now that it's a critical level, the truck's going to roll out and actually go fill up our generator again. And what we can see now is, again, all this data is being sent back through IoT Cloud, and we can see now that it's at 1,233. It's in good shape. The case has been closed out automatically just based on the fuel levels. The person that went out and filled it didn't have to, use any app on their phone or anything like that. All of this is happening automatically. And on the accounting side, the customer's paid, the fuel's been delivered, and the opportunity is now closed won. So I think that kind of starts to show the power of what we can do with Xively connecting the end devices and IoT Cloud. But again, if you guys have more questions or want to dig into the potential or the specific parts of how this demo was built, definitely stop by one of the IoT Cloud demos or the Xively booth downstairs.
Yeah, and it's, it's worth saying, Callum touched on it. What you saw happen is not like one side of the screen talking to the other. That device, that every time you're sliding the little sliders back and forth, that's sending data up from here over the Wi-Fi to Ashburn in our data center, to Xively, our production system, sending it back and changing values in IoT Cloud and bring it back. So the point being that this product simulator is actually, like the latency you see, like how fast those are all being updated, is that's real-time stuff. And the idea being you design here and then you deploy commercially. Remember we talked about like that gap of getting through all the pieces together and then actually deploying commercially. That's one of the things that you're able to do here. So I don't know if that timer's exactly right. It says 10 minutes. We may be closer to 5 or so.
Got about 4 minutes left, I think.
About 4 minutes on the real clock. So we'd love to hear some questions. If you have some questions or some thoughts. There's a mic right over there. Anybody want to go first? Yeah.
I'm curious, in your demo, how often does it go down by 1 gallon and then update? Does it transmit every gallon?
So go ahead, Callum. Do you want to talk about the states?
Yeah, it definitely could. So in a real world scenario, it's as often as the generator wants to transmit its data. So Xively will handle taking it and putting it into IoT Cloud. And so it could be sending updates, multiple times a second if we wanted to, if we were talking about something a little bit more critical. But it can be at any frequency in terms of how often it decreases.
Yeah, and that's, you set the parameters for what you want, the type of data, and we organize it for you. So it can be every minute, it can be when it hits certain levels, and that's really up to the kind of the use case. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Other questions? There were a bunch of hands of people who are like looking to deploy IoT products. If you have no questions, I want to work for you. Go ahead, please.
Question, the freight container, freight farm.
Yeah.
Thing you were showing. You showed that some data flows into Salesforce app, but then you have a bunch of apps connected directly to Xively. What's the difference?
Yeah, so that was a very simple kind of architecture. So we have at Xively, we have APIs. So if you just want to write an app somewhere that just talks to our APIs, you can do that. If you want to use Heroku to host those apps, you can do that. If there's apps that are extended to Salesforce, you can do that as well. I think you also saw there was other apps and dashboards connected to Salesforce as well. So that's it's essentially an oversimplification to show, but really all of those are possible. All those are possible. Yeah, right behind you.
Morning, very, very cool stuff here. We're considering doing effort for lead acid manufacturers, lead acid battery manufacturers.
Yep.
Exciting technology. We're considering connecting our motive power batteries to Salesforce, essentially.
Yeah.
They have a 5-year warranty on them.
Yes.
And so I'm just kind of asking from a best practice perspective, how much data and for how long do you database? How much data and for how long do you database that information?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing it in real time,
It can be insane amounts of data.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'll highlight it and then, if you want to kind of add to it. So the answer is you can collect all the data exhaust if you want. You can throw it into a storage bucket and just pay for the storage. We can store it for, but to your point, that's killing a fly with a sledgehammer, right? So very often what we'll do with our customers is we'll have some on-device discrimination, some rules or triggers that can be built into an app that's on a physical device, depending on the capabilities of it. If it's a small embedded processor, it might be tough. If it's a Linux machine at the edge, you can do more, and there's ranges in the middle. But often what we try to do in the use case with our customers is discriminate between the data that matters to go up to the cloud and data that doesn't. 99.999% of the data just tells you everything's fine, right? So working that out, and that's something that we would typically do a discovery workshop with you as a customer to just kind of figure out how you want to architect that. And then the trade-offs, right? If you want to store more, what it might cost to take, and if you want to store less, how to make that happen.
And
that
I would
make
just
sense?
add that, you know, so you have the use cases that you're currently going to run through, but you also want to think about what you might want to do in the future. So, you know, of course you do that in the workshop, but with Einstein, for example, predictive analytics, you know, maybe this data would be useful in the future to kind of help you fine tune what you're doing with IoT, so.
If that's helpful, and we're happy to talk more in detail later. Yes, please.
Can you talk a little bit about security? How can we make sure that nobody's gonna, you know, crack into the system?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of answers. Actually, I've answered a couple. Callum, you want to take that one?
Sure. So I think there's multiple components to building any secure solution. We take a lot of safeguards at Xively in securing the physical endpoints and how we secure the communication from the devices up into our platform, as well as securing the onboarding process so that you make sure that only real devices with secure capabilities are connecting to the platform and communicated in a secure way. So some of that is using you know, existing security technologies that we've learned from growing up in this internet and cloud world. Things like TLS, things like PKI are both things we make use of to secure devices at Xively. When you talk about the security of the end-to-end system, you know, I think you're leveraging other learnings or other things that have been put in place from standard web security practices.
Yeah. And we can talk quite a bit about that. We have white papers on the subject as well, if you want to get into some more detail. So we're almost at, if we can take one quick question, I'd hate to miss you, but please go ahead.
So the example that you have shown here is predefined events, right? So you are defining the events, saying like when this your reaches so and so ways, you're sending notification. My question is, you know, this is good.
Yep.
Right? So which I know what is going to happen and this happens. But does it also learn from the past, right? When certain things happen, this issue occurs. But does that make those situations and create a learn?
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point, and actually kind of touches to what Lisa
Right.
was saying about what you do today versus the future. I don't want to keep people here too long. I'd love to talk to you about it. Today, it's often creating rules and events and triggers. And over time, you'd want to think about what data you might want to learn from.
Right.
We are not a machine learning engine ourselves. We would leverage Salesforce for part of that or some other systems.
And other services that we can provide,
And other
yes. So
services.
we're happy to talk about that. That just would be an extension of your use case.
Yeah. So we'd love to do it. I hate to keep people long and over time. I thought it was a great session. Did you? It's good?
Thank
Good?
you, everyone.
All right.
Really appreciate
Thank you so
your
much
time
for your
today.
time. I'm glad to talk to anybody after the show. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of Dreamforce.